everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is MTG Dude, and today we're going to be continuing our Digging Up the Past to Different Tribes series with the part 2 of Avatars, all the way back with Alara, with Child of Alara. So for Wooburg, you get a 6/6 trample, legendary creature avatar, and when it is put into a graveyard from play, destroy all non-land permanents that can be regenerated. They cannot. So I've seen a couple decks with this at the helm, and I've never been impressed with it because it's always, most of the time, board wipes or something like that. But if you need a push button, you know, there it is, I guess. Progenitus for double Wooburg. It's a 10/10 with protection from everything. And if you put it to a graveyard from anywhere, reveal it, shuffle it into its owner's library instead. This would actually be a pretty good creature in a Avatar deck. World Queller for 3 and a 2 green. It's a 4/4 at the beginning of your upkeep. You may choose a card type. If you do, each player sacrifices a permanent of that type. So if you choose like artifacts, everybody's got to sack an artifact, stuff like that. That could actually be pretty good in a board stalled game where you can just make everybody sack something. Or a braids deck. If you put braids in a deck like this, it'd be pretty good. Death Shadow for a single black. It's a 13/13 and gets -X/-X, where X is your life total. Modern All-Star and just all around card when you see it hit the battlefield if you're playing in that in 60 card formats. Transcendent Master for 1 and 2 white. It's a level up card, so for 1 mana you can just level it up as you go. But you have to get up to 12 just to be able to get it to where it is a lifelink indestructible 9/9. I mean, for base power and toughness, 3 mana for a 3/3 is not bad. But if you can get it up to a level 6 or a level 12, it just gets better as you go. I mean, if you have what? Let's just say 3 plus 12. If you have 15 mana to spare, you can just throw it out there and make it a 12/12. You might need more than that in case somebody decides they want to knock it off before you make it an indestructible with lifelink. Avatar of Slaughter for 6 and 2 red. It's an 8/8. All creatures have double strike and attack each turn if able. So if you are playing, this would be good in a goad deck. That way, you know, you goad all the creatures and they all have double strike and they have to attack regardless. It's actually pretty good. Get your opponents down to where they're fighting amongst themselves and doing a lot of damage. Then you sacrifice this to where, alright, well, my creatures don't have to attack, so pass the turn. Essence of the Wild for 3 and 3 green. It's 6/6. Creatures you control enter the battlefield as a copy of Essence of the Wild. I could see this one actually going pretty good, especially if you have tokens and they all become 6/6s and you can have them have haste and double strike with Avatar Slaughter. That actually would be pretty cool. Illuminate Primordial, and then we get into the Gate Crash Primordial cycle. For 5 and 2 white, it's 4/7 with Vigilance, and it enters the battlefield. For each opponent, exile up to 1 target creature that player controls, and that player gains life equal to its power. It's actually pretty mid, but you know, it is what it is. This is Avatars. Diluvian Primordial for 5 and 2 white. It's a 5/5 with flying, and when it enters, for each opponent, you may cast up to 1 target instant or sorcery card from that player's graveyard without paying its mana cost. If a card cast this way would be put into a graveyard, exile instead. This one's actually pretty cool. I see this one every now and then on the tables, and it's always fun whenever they're like, alright, blow the world up. Sepulchral Primordial for 5 and 2 black. It's a 5/4 with Intimidate, so it can't be blocked except for by creatures that share a color with it, so black. And when it enters the battlefield, for each opponent, you may put up to 1 target creature card from that player's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So it's like a Rise from the Grave effect, but or a Reanimate effect without having to worry about, you know, paying for other stuff. Molten Primordial for 5 and 2 red. It's 6/4 with haste. It enters the battlefield. You get to gank, just take 2 creature from each opponent, and you can untap them and they gain haste, and then you sacrifice them because if you're not going to give them their best creature back. Sylvian Primordial for 5 and 2 green. It's 6/8. When it enters the battlefield, for each opponent, destroy up to one target non-creature permanent that player controls. For each permanent destroyed this way, search your library for a forest card and put that card onto the battlefield tapped. This was so good they had to nerf it. Yeah. And I mean, it just seems so out of color for green anyway. Because I mean, non-creature permanent, yeah, that's fine. But that's like, okay, enchantments, stuff like that. It just gets really good the later the game goes. You just start blowing up the best enchantments, artifacts, and or lands. Fell Shepherd for 5 and 2 black. It is a 8/6. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may return to your hand all creature cards that were put into your graveyard from the battlefield this turn. I could see this actually being really good with the She-Ray deck. Oh, and it also has the ability for a black sacrifice another creature. Target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. So this would be, yeah, I feel like this would be really good in a She-Ray deck where you just find a way to get this through, sack all your creatures when the ability goes on the stack, and then just bring them back again, and then have another round of triggers at your end step. Soul of Theros for 4 and 2 white. It's a 6/6 with vigilance. It has 2 abilities. For 4 and 2 white, creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain first strike and lifelink until end of turn. And for 4 and 2 white, exile it from your graveyard. Creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain first strike and lifelink until end of turn. So you get to do it twice, multiple times if it's on the battlefield, and it stacks. So you could just pay 4, 5, 6, 12 mana and give them +4/+4 and lifelink and first strike. It's not bad. I mean, it's not good, but it's not bad. Soul of Ravnica for 4 and 2 blue. It's 6/6 with flying. For 5 and 2 blue, draw a card for each color among permanents you control. This would be good when you're playing a multicolored avatar deck. For 5 and 2 blue, the other ability, you can exile it, draw a card for each. It's the same ability. You just draw cards for each color among permanents you control. Soul of Innistrad, and I am digging this art. This is just beautiful art to me. It's just a giant gargantuan zombie-ish creature, but it's an avatar. And it's a weird thing about the souls of the worlds, of the different planes. I'll have to get into that in a different episode. But for 4 and 2 black, it's 6/6 with Death Touch. And it has 2 abilities that you can use for 3 and 2 black. The first one is return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. And then the next ability is you exile it from your graveyard, return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. Same thing. Soul of Chandalar for 4 and 2 red. It's 6/6 with first strike. Same thing with the rest of the souls. 3 and 2 red. Deals damage to target player, and 3 up to 1 target creature. And the same thing, you're just exiling it. Soul of Zendikar for 4 and 2 green. It's 6/6 with reach. Same thing with the abilities. For 3 and 2 green, you can put a 3/3 green beast creature token onto the battlefield. I wish it scaled up because it's in the graveyard. That's just my personal opinion. Soul of New Phyrexia. This one is actually like really good for me. Like, to me. And this was in M15, so it's been reprinted a few times. For 6 generic mana, it's a 6/6 with trample. It's an artifact creature. And for 5 mana, twice, 2 different abilities, permanents you control gain indestructible until end of turn. And even if it's gone, you can still pay 5 mana and give all your permanents indestructible until end of turn. Hallowed Spirit Keeper for 1 and 2 white. It's a 3/2 with vigilance. And when it dies, put X 1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying onto the battlefield, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. For a aristocrat deck, if you're constantly just throwing away your unused and just throwing them away like they're BOGOs and you didn't even want the other free one, this could get pretty good because it counts the number of creature cards in your graveyard. Living Lore. I don't know how I feel about this art. It's like standing on 3 legs, but it's a paper mache creature. I don't know. For 3 and a blue, it's a star. It gets Enters the battlefield, exile an instant sorcery card from your graveyard. Its power and toughness are equal to the mana value of that spell. And when it deals combat damage, you may sacrifice it. If you do, cast the exile card without paying its mana cost. So it doesn't exile it itself. So you could essentially keep bringing this back somehow and just exiling different and sacking him. I think that would be more mana intensive than it would be worth. But, that's a good idea. Avatar of the Resolute for 2 green. It's a 3/2 with reach and trample. Enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter. Good in a counter doubling deck. Animus Predation for 4 and a green. It's a 4/4. And like half of this doesn't matter. Actually, none of it matters because it's just in Commander, it's just a generic 4/4 for 5. Primeval Protector for 10 and a green. It's a hefty cost, but it costs less for each creature your opponents control, and it's a 10/10. It enters the battlefield, put a counter on each other creature you control. It's not bad. Aeon Chronicler for 3 and 2 blue. It's a star equal to the number of cards in your hand. And you could suspend it for X. And 3 in a blue, but X can't be 0. So you suspend it once, and whenever it's a time counter is removed from it while it's exiled, you can draw a card. So you suspend it for a bunch, you may not get it. You just do it for forever. But you just have constant card draw for the rest of the game if you do it for enough. Arabo, Roar of the World for 3, a green and a white. It's a 5/5 cat avatar with the Eminence ability. So at the beginning of combat on your turn, if Arabo of the World is in the command zone or on the battlefield, and another target cat you control gets +3/+3 until end of turn. And whenever another cat you control attacks, you may pay 1, a green and a white. If you do, it gains trample. And +X/+X until end of turn, where X is its power. So the second ability you can only do if it's on the battlefield. Yep. I had to really get to where I was learning what Eminence and the abilities were going on, because I got this deck when I was in a newer player when it released, and I had to make sure that I was playing the game right. This is the Erd Dragon for 4 in Wooburg. You get one of the best dragons in the game. That's a 10/10, and it has an Eminence ability. As long as it's in your command zone or on the battlefield, other dragon spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. It has flying, and when one or more dragons you control attack, draw that many cards, then you may put a permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield. Awakening Sun's Avatar, and now we're getting into the closer to more recent sets with the Ixalan block. For 5 and 2, 3 white, it's a 7/7. When it enters the battlefield, if you cast it from your hand, destroy all non-dinosaur creatures. It's actually pretty good in a tribal dinosaur deck. Burning Sun's Avatar for 3 and 3 red. It's 6/6. It enters, it deals 3 to target opponent and up to 1 target creature. Verdant Sun's Avatar for 5 and 2 green. It's a 5/5, and whenever it or another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain life equal to that creature's toughness. This is great in a Toughness Matters deck, stuff like that. And then we get the boy Geshath, or the girl Geshath. I don't know what the canon of this one is. But for 5, a red, a green, and a white. And I do not like it when they mix the pips up. I don't know what it is, but I don't like it when it should be white, red, green. But for 5 and a red, green, and a white, it's a 7/6 with trample, vigilance, and haste. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, reveal that many cards from the top of your library. Excuse me. Put any number of dinosaur creature cards from among them onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. I don't see this one going in an avatar build, in an avatar based deck, because it relies on other dinosaurs. Like, yeah, you might have 1 or 2 more, like the avatars, Sun's Avatar cycle. I just don't see it. Ever a Halcyon Witness for 4 and 2 white. It's a 4/4 with lifelink, but for 4 mana, you can activate the ability to exchange your life total with their power. So, give them all your. You swap power and toughness with it. You swap your life total with its power and toughness. And you get 4. You're at 4 and they're at, I don't know, 32. And then swing, it gains that much, and then you swap it back. So you got to have a lot of mana to play to get this effect going right, to where you're just netting extra life. Torgar, Famine Incarnate for 6 and 2 black. It's a 7/6. As an additional cost to cast a spell, you may sacrifice any number of creatures. This spell costs 2 less to cast for each creature sacrificed this way. And when it enters the battlefield, up to one target player's life total becomes half their starting life total rounded down. So if they're at 40, they would go to 20. If they're at an excessive amount of life, they go to 20. Which, this is actually pretty good because, like, say you sacrifice 3 creatures, you just get it to 2 black, and then one of your opponents become a 20. So it's actually pretty good in my opinion. I like the art too. Multani Yavimaya's Avatar for Avatar. I don't know why I'm saying it like that. For 4 and 2 green, it's a 0/0, but its power and toughness she gets +1/+1 for each land you control, a land card in your graveyard, and it has reach and trample. And if you're playing this as your commander, for 1 in a green, you can return 2 lands you control to its owner's hand, and you just put it back in your hand from the graveyard. Muldrotha the Gravetide for 3 a black, a green, and a blue. It's a 6/6, and during each of your turns, you may play up to 1 permanent card of each permanent type from your graveyard. So that it does include lands. Nimbus Champion. Now we get into some Battle Bond that I didn't even know existed. Some Battle Bond avatars. For 5 and a blue, it's a 4/4 with flying. And when it attacks, you may return target creature to its owner's hand if that creature's power is less than or equal to the number of warriors on your team controls. Which is pretty. This is one of those two-headed giant cards. But your team is still you. So if you have a bunch of warriors, you can return just about anything. Avatar Growth for 4 and 2 green. It's a 4/4, and the spell costs 1 less to cast for each opponent you have. So if you're playing in a super big game, this is just 2 green for a 4/4 with trample. And when it enters the battlefield, each player searches their library for up to 2 basic land cards, puts them onto the battlefield, then shuffles their library. I can see this one being real good, and then I can see it being really bad, because if you're helping your opponent's ramp as early as turn 2, they could get bad later on. But it is still a 4/4 for trample for 2 mana sometimes. And that is going to be it for today, guys. I really appreciate everybody that watches, comments, likes, and especially all of my subscribers, all my new subscribers, all the old subscribers. I just can't say it enough. I really appreciate you guys, and I hope we get to keep growing until, the horde is just overwhelming. But that's going to be it for today, guys. I will see you guys next time in the graveyard.